Välkomna till Aktiespararna och Småbolagsdagarna här i Stockholm. Idag är det den 13 juni 2023 och vi kommer strax att få höra en bolagspresentation utav Biosergen. Och den som kommer att hålla det är COO Tine Kold Olesen. Välkommen och varsågod. Ordet och golvet är ditt.
Thank you for the introduction, and I am so sorry I don't speak Swedish. I understand Swedish, but I can't speak Swedish. So I'll do it in English, and I hope that's okay for everyone. Questions, I think, can be translated by Peter, or maybe I understand the question, so if they're in Swedish, it's also okay. But my presentation will be in English, and this is the disclaimer. So what are we talking about here? The previous presentations talked about oncology. So many patients that have, a disease, a chronic disease, can be immunosuppressed. So anyone can get a cancer disease, anyone can get HIV, diabetes, a significant lung disease, or be organ transplanted. They are immunosuppressed, and they have a weak immune system, which means they're open for infections, and that can be a fungal infection, and it can be a life-threatening fungal infection if it goes into the blood or if it goes into the lungs. So we're talking about invasive fungal infection or life-threatening severe fungal diseases. There are today only few effective treatments for these invasive fungal infection, and they're getting less effective, and I'll come back to that in a while. On the top, you have a disease, a fungal disease, called mucormycosis. It is eating the bones, it's eating the organs. It's a fungal that you can get. It's very often in the subtropical area that you see this disease. Candidiasis is also one of those that are life-threatening if it develops into, like you have an infection in the mouth, and then it goes into your bloodstream as well. And then another very difficult to treat fungal infection is also called aspergillosis. If we talk about what is the problem, then you could say more than 1.7 million die of this invasive fungal infection. If you look at the bottom, the x-axis, then you can see there's a number of common cancer diseases, and you can see fungal infections deaths are almost the same as the number of patients that die with lung cancer. So you can die of a cancer disease, or you can have a cancer, but you can die of a fungal disease. The alert came up in 2022 with WHO, and it's primarily because you see it spreading. More and more get these invasive fungal diseases. So it is now recognized as a global health threat from WHO, and it's also on the radar many other places. I don't know exact about Sweden, but something like Center for Disease Control in the United States is also having a red alert up to this invasive fungal infections. And one problem is the number of deaths. Another problem is resistance formation. So all these fungal spores, fungus, they form resistance towards the current treatment. So over the last 2 or 3 years, there has been a lot of press coverage because it becomes a serious problem. And you could say that resistance, it becomes a little complicated now. But there are different types of treatment. So there are fungal treatment that inhibits the growth of a fungus. It doesn't kill, it inhibits. When the treatment inhibits, then it goes the way that it does with bacteria, that there's a risk that you form resistance. You get new fungi that are resistant to treatment. And that means that you prefer to have drugs that kills the fungi. And one of these drugs is something that has been on the market since the 50s, and that's called amphotericin B. But the problem with that particular class of drug called polyene macrolides and this particular drug is that there's a high toxicity. So you're not very happy for actually using amphotericin B or ambisome because of these toxicity. So there's a growing number of people that has no treatment option. And that means that you have to do surgical removal on the infected place, which can be a kidney, a heart, a brain, the eye, etc. And then if you give amphotericin B, there's a high risk for kidney toxicity, and that means that you might kill the fungus, but you have to lose your kidney. So it's a major issue with the current treatments. If we look at what are our company doing? And we are doing a compound called BSG005. It's a known mechanism of action. It has the same mechanism of action as amphotericin B. It's a polyene macrolide, we call it. And it has a minimized toxicity. So it's a known mechanism of action, but we are reducing the kidney tox. That's the vision of our company. You could say it's a natural occurring fungicidal, so it kills the fungus. It's synthesized in a bacterial strain called Streptomyces noursae. And it has in vitro, in vivo, and in humans shown that we don't have the kidney toxicity. So we think so far we're okay. It's also free of cardiovascular and central nervous system and respiratory adverse events. And the way it acts is that it binds to a fatty acid called ergosterol. And that leads to that the cell pores open in the fungi, and then you kill the fungi by destroying the cell wall. This ergosterol is not found in human beings. The problem, or what you can say, is amphotericin B is not only selective to ergosterol, it's also cholesterol and ergosterol looks like each other. It's almost the same. And therefore, amphotericin B, the current product on the market, can bind to cholesterol, which is in the kidney. Biosergen's product is more selective. So we go for ergosterol alone. We're more selective. And we kill the fungus. And we have seen that also in vivo and in vitro. So this here is on the top. You see some of those fungal infections or fungi strains that are difficult to treat. Candida, Aspergillus, Fusarium, Mucor, Cryptococcus. Each one of them has several species below it, but these are the main strains. And if you look at the top, then you can see we have BSG and amphotericin B, both extremely effective, and we kill fungus. Then you can see we have the azole, they're fungostatic, and that means they inhibit growth. And if you can see, the fluconazole is becoming red, and it's becoming more and more red because there's resistance formation. So the fungi forms resistance against a product that has been on the market for some time. So for the azole, it's a typical pesticide used in farming industry, and therefore there's a high risk of formation of resistance. And then at the bottom, we have another class of drug called echinocandins, and that's capsofungin. And again, we have formation of resistance. So all in all, I think we belong to the class of drugs that kill fungus and have less risk of forming resistance. This here is a little busy slide, but it has a lot of information in it. So we have done, we have a solid packet of in vitro and in vivo data. And this here is kind of summing up everything. It's one study we have done, so I'm only going to show this, but all the other data confirms this here. So if you look at the bottom here, it's days of infection and it's survival data. So it's good to be in the top. You have to survive. And if you look at the blue and the red one, then you can see that's the control. They die. This is mice that is infected with candidiasis. And of course, if you're not treated, then you will die. The next couple of graphs, pink, light blue, etc., that's the azole, and the echinocandins. So you see, they seem to be less effective than the polyene. Polyene is on the top. The green and the orange, that's amphotericin B, and it's BSG 005. Then, so you could see we have survival of the mice, right? Then you could say, okay, BSG 005, the orange one, is a little less. But if you look at the doses, you can see there's a hell of a difference. Ambisome is given in a dose of 2 milligram per kilo, 2.7, and BSG is down to 0.7 milligram per kilogram. So BSG 005 seems to be a very potent drug, and we can increase the dose. But in this experiment, we chose 0.7 milligram per kilogram. We have done our phase 1 trials, and we exposed 38 healthy volunteers. We did a single dose, we did multiple dosing, and I think all in all, you could say we had no serious adverse events in the trial. We saw some side effects that were related to the infusion of the drug and in the single dose. But when we repeated dosing in the second part of the study, the patients or the volunteers got used to it, and these side effects minimized. Another extremely important finding is that on these healthy volunteers, when we looked at all the parameters telling us about the kidney, the liver, the heart, the brain, there was no clinical significant findings. It was safe. So that means for us it's a big step forward. We have seen that in humans we don't have any lab parameters showing a negative effect. So in a way we have a little bit proved our concept in healthy volunteers. If we move to phase 2A, this is our upcoming study. We are now compiling everything that is needed for a regulatory approval. And we're going to test the drug in 10 to 15 patients that has failed on amphotericin B due to toxicity, due to kidney issues. So everyone we know that has been on amphotericin B but had to stop because of a side effect, they're going into our study. That's the plan. So we call it rescue therapy. So here, this is the market size of the different antifungal, or those that are for life-threatening invasive fungal infection. And you can see the azole and the echinocandins have the majority of the market, but it's also due to the fact that amphotericin B has these toxicity issues. Approximately 30% of the patients on amphotericin B is having issues with safety. This is the team in Biosergen. Peter Andersen is the CEO. He is a serial entrepreneur. Nils is the CFO, that's me, and then we have a development officer who is extremely good in technical issues. So what do? It's a little provocative, the headline here. We contribute to solving a global health threat, but we live with it as a passion, the four of us. But we focus on threatening life-threatening antifungal or invasive fungal diseases, those that are difficult to treat, those are resistant, and we have a known mechanism of action, and we have less toxicity. We have started the clinical development in patients to show efficacy and safety, and those are in patients that have shown they can't tolerate anything else. And important is that BSD-005 belong to the class that are killing fungi. That's very important to remember. And we have a number of other formulations that are in the making, which can make it even better for those who have a pulmonary disease or similar. I think I can see here I'm over time, so the last slide here was probably fast, but I think that's all from me. Yeah. I think I can hear myself breathing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really... Yeah.
Thank you very much for an interesting presentation, Tine. You have one molecule to develop and within the company. And sometimes that might be a bit risky for an investor, for example. Can you comment upon that a little bit? Do you see what I'm trying to say? Having a one product company, how do you look upon that? I guess you have discussed it internally, and maybe you have even been posed this kind of question before. But do you have a comment upon it?
Yeah, I think so. I've been working in the pharmaceutical industry approximately 30 years. And for most of the big companies, they actually at some point in time agree to focus, because life science is completely, it's unpredictable, or you could say it's biology. We really have to focus, and we have to get into the detail. So for me, it makes sense to have one asset, because if I do that asset very, very well, and I'm almost sure I'll have a success. Whereas if I have several compounds and I have a certain pool of investment, then some of it might get diluted on the way. And to have one asset and be an investor also means that there's complete transparency. You'll know everything we do. I can't move money around or promote this or promote that or risk mitigate. There's complete openness in what we do. Yeah. You can see it.
There is no way to hide anything.
No.
Okay. You are now starting your phase 2A clinical study, as you mentioned here on one of the slides. Can you comment a little bit about the risk for the development program? Is there a, should I say, a low, medium, or a high risk development program that you are facing?
So I think the beauty of this BSD-005 is that when you have a known mechanism of action, you can actually move a little bit faster in your development. So that's an upside. We're primarily focusing, you could say, on the safety side. This is where we have to win the battle. And that means that I would say it's not a high risk, and it might move faster. Low or medium, we're still early. So I wouldn't say medium. I'd probably say low to medium. So I think we have a good value proposition with a known mechanism of action. And the second part is, which I forgot to mention, is we are fungicidal, which is quite unique within this area, and the market is growing, etc. And yeah.
Okay.
So that would be my answer to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Competitors, are there? Do you consider to have any competitors? Because if you succeed, it seems that you will be very unique in the market. Is that the correct understanding, or are there competitors chasing you and following very closely what you're doing because they are on the same track, but they let you be the front runner?
So if you look at the pipeline of those drugs that are in development for invasive fungal infection, then all of us has different mechanism of action. And we all have our own little pathway forward. BST-005 or Biosergen has the only product in development that is fungicidal. And that's so the others has something else, but we are the only one who can actually kill the fungus, which is important when we talk about resistance formation.
And I think that's very important to remember, that you're the only one who can actually kill it.
Yeah. Kill the bastard.
Yeah. When we leave from here today after your presentation, what are the let's say 3 to 4 most important things that you would like us to bring along and to be able to monitor and to compare to, and to also see when you are making a press release that now we have achieved this and now we have achieved this? What are the 3 to 4 things that you would like us to carry along?
I think if you think about the fungal or the market for invasive fungal infection, it's growing. More and more patients get cancer. More and more patients are immunosuppressed. We're used to living long. So it's a growing market. I think to provide or to give a drug that can kill and at the same time have low toxicity, that's a good value proposition to have. So I think we will expand, the market will expand, and at the same time, we will also grow within the market because we offer this value proposition. The clinical development is a little bit special, and we have orphan designation in the United States, so it gives us an advantage in development. We have this rescue program, which I just showed, the phase 2A. I hope we can go into broaden that, and by that we can go into what is called compassionate use, which is helping those patients that have no other treatment option. And I think development-wise, we are not super risky.
No. We
are in a medium range, and hopefully we can do it faster than many others, because there are so much knowledge out there already on amphotericin B.
From a geographical point of view, the fungal problem that you are addressing, is it as spread all over the world, or are there in more of that kind of problem in Asia or in Europe, as compared to the US or compared to South America, or is it all over the same kind of problem, no geographical disturbance whatsoever?
So we live in a global world, and one of the things that came out with COVID was, for instance, you talked about Candida auris, and I don't know, it has been in the international press. So Candida auris was a fungal infection which is very severe, and almost no one can treat it. We moved from Japan or to United States, and it's coming to Europe, and it goes in the ICU. And if you in an intensive care unit get a fungal infection like Candida auris, sometimes you simply have to close the department. So I would say it's a global problem. Something like you want tulips in the spring. So you take a plane, you pick up tulips in Peru, you fly them to Europe, And in Peru, you have used pesticides, and suddenly you have a fungal strain that is transported from, that has resistance, that has been transported from another country to a new country.
Okay. Okay.
So I would say it's a global problem, and I think that's why it came on the agenda for WHO.
Thank you very much for coming here, and thank you for a very nice presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.